Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting adventure at the Hub World. Today's class will have us covering the topic of Pokemon. My name is Jules, and today our party members are...
Matteo.
And Gino.
Whether you're joining our adventure from YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, be sure to like and subscribe. Let's get this adventure rolling. So, if you caught our last episode, we just started up a series of episodes called the Ideal 151 Pokemon. The concept behind this is that we are taking that original iconic number of 151 and we're creating our version of a 151 Pokédex using any of the Pokemon from any of the generations, although there are some rules. If you want the full breakdown of the rules, I don't want to re-explain them entirely in this episode, so I would go back and check episode 1 where Matteo broke down his Ideal 151, but I'll give you a little bit of an abridged one. Generally, we're keeping the same structure, so all 1 stage, 2 stage, and 3 stages also become 1 stage, 2 stage, 3 stage. We had to include starter lines, the same number of legendaries, and same number of evolutions, and things like that. So most things are a trade-off 1 for 1. That being said, I believe this episode I will be sharing my Ideal 151. Are we ready to get this rolling?
Yep. I'm good.
Okay, sounds good. And just for those of you who are listening from our Spotify or from Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, if you head over to YouTube, we'll have some imagery accompanying this so that you can be more engaged. But just for your benefit, I will also make sure to narrate which Pokemon I'm replacing and what number we're on, just so that you can follow along. But let's get started. So to start, we have the 3 starter lines, numbers 1 through 9. So I replaced number 1 through 3. And if you caught last episode, Matteo also replaced Bulbasaur's line. And I was very, very tempted to replace this line with Trico's line, just like Matteo did, because I also love Trico's line. But there's one line of Pokemon that I like more than Trico's line, and that's Rowlet's line. So I replaced Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur with Rowlet, Dartrix, and Decidueye. I will die on this hill. I think Decidueye is the best designed final evolution starter since Charizard, and possibly better than Charizard. I don't know how else to explain it. I adore Decidueye. I love the typing. I love the design. I love everything about Rowlet's line. It's so cute and it becomes so badass. So that's my replacement for my grass starter. And to be specific, original Decidueye, not Hisuian Decidueye. I'm not as much of a fan of Hisuian Decidueye.
I think most people are in that case. I didn't even think you were going to decide on Hisuian Decidueye.
But I did keep 4, 5, and 6 the same. I did keep Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard. I don't always pick Charizard when I do Gen 1, but Charizard has become a staple of my team because I'm in love with shiny Charizard. So Charizard is a staple part of my team, and it's just such a classic Pokemon. I know it's overrated. I can completely acknowledge that Charizard is overrated, but you will see that as a trend in my list that I love popular Pokemon. And there's a reason why those Pokemon are popular, and it's because they're good. And Charizard is one of those Pokemon, so Charizard is still staying. Now, 7, 8, and 9 was tougher for me because I like a lot of the water starters, and I was very tempted to keep Squirtle, Wartortle, and Blastoise because I really do like them. But it felt weird to me just changing Bulbasaur. So I was like, no, I'm going to make myself change Squirtle, so what's the next best thing? And at first, I thought maybe Oshawott line, because I do really like Oshawott line, but the reason I didn't go with that is I was like, I already put Rowlet in there, and now this is getting 2 Legends Arceus, so I want something more unique. So I ended up replacing it with, actually, this is my favorite water first stage Pokemon. It's not necessarily my favorite line of starters, but every time I play Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, I always pick this as my playable character because I love the first stage. Totodile, Croconaw, for Alligator are my water starters because I just love Totodile. I love Gen 2. I still like Croconaw and for Alligator. I still really do enjoy them. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that they're just water type, but that's okay. I can forgive that. And Totodile's cute. I love alligators, so those are my starters. Number 10 and 11 and 12, which is Caterpie's line. I did axe Caterpie's line to replace it with a different bug line. my regional bug line. And the one that I went with was Blipbug, Dotlearn, Orbeetle, the regional bug from the most current Gen 8. I really like Orbeetle as a type. Psychic and Bug is really cool. It also is just a cool design. I'm not the biggest fan of like Dotler and Blipbug, but to me, like early stage regional bug lines all look stupid. So it's really about what the end goal is, and Orbeetle is a really cool end goal. There were a couple other ones I considered, but Orbeetle was always kind of at the forefront. So that's my regional bug. Now, 13, 14, and 15 are also a regional bug from Gen 1. It was Weedle's line, but I axed that. I was like, no, get out. I love Beedrill, don't get me wrong. Big fan of Beedrill and its Mega Evolution. But there was actually a Pokemon that's later in Gen 1's Dex that I had to remove because it got another evolution that I needed somewhere to put it in, and it felt great to put it here. So I replaced Weedle's line with Zubat's line. Zubat, Golbat, and Crobat, because I love Crobat.
Yeah, Crobat is cool.
Crobat's honestly one of my favorite Pokemon to come out of Gen 2. I know like Caesar tends to be the favorite that everybody kind of points to, but Crobat I think is mine. I love how fast it is. I love its design. I actually never liked Zubat's line until Crobat showed up. And I it's one of those Pokemon that I'm just like always reminded of how much I like it when it shows up. I was like, oh yeah, like Crobat's one of my favorites. And I do love Poison type, and you will see that throughout this list because I'm a big Poison type fan. We're on to the regional bird. Pidgey's line has been replaced with my favorite regional bird line, which again comes from the most recent gen, Rookidee, Corvisquire, and Corviknight. And that is 100% again because of the final evolution. Corviknight, in my opinion, is the single best bird Pokemon they've ever introduced in Pokemon.
Yep.
It is so cool. It is so edgy. I love Steel Flying. Like, I know Skarmory is also Steel Flying, but Corviknight just does it way better. Such a cool Pokemon. Like, literally one of my favorite Pokemon because of how just, like, perfect the design is. It's not overcomplicated. It's very, very simple, but it just slaps. It's so good. It's just such a great Pokemon design. So that was like an easy choice.
I love the utility that they give Corviknight within the region. How like it has the taxi that flies you around. It's like your fast travel.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And then I also just love like the design of Corviknight and its like armored look is so cool. That is like arguably one of the best designed Pokemon in a very, very, very long time. Corviknight is phenomenal. And I love how we learned of Corviknight before we learned of any of its pre-evolutions. Like Corviknight was one of the first Pokemon shown for Gen 8 as well.
I know. And it's like, honestly, I still think it's probably one of, if not the best designed Pokemon from that gen. So, moving on, regional rodent. Rattata and Raticate, I've removed them. I did consider using the Alolan variants of Rattata and Raticate, but I just don't really like them. To be honest, I think I like the originals better. But ultimately, there was only one rodent for me, and that is Bidoof.
Yep.
Spoilers again for Matteo's episode, but I was not a fan of Bidoof when Gen 4 came out. I was definitely a Bidoof underappreciator. But Gino has sold me on Bidoof, and Bidoof has easily become one of my favorite Pokemon. To the point where he's just so awesome. It's just such a great Pokemon.
I was a true Bidoof believer right from day one in Gen 4 when Matteo and everyone encounter one. It's like, I'm gonna kill this thing. It's ugly. It's dumb. It has Bidoof. It's Doof in its name. And I'm like, no, Bidoof is great.
It has Doof in its name.
That being said, I'm still not a huge fan of Bibarel, but Bidoof is solid.
Bidoof makes up
it
for
is near
everything. It is
perfection.
perfect.
Yeah.
Bidoof
I don't need to evolve Bidoof. I can just keep it as Bidoof. So that's my rodent. Okay, so now we get to the other regional bird line because for some reason Gen 1 had 2 regional bird lines, and Spearow is one of the most forgettable and boring Pokemon in existence, so of course I didn't keep it. And I actually replaced it with one of my favorite bug lines. And this bug line has become one of my favorite bug lines. This is another Pokemon that when it debuted, I actually did not like it. I thought it was a stupid Pokemon. Then it got an evolution. I still thought it was a stupid Pokemon. And only in the last 4 years, 3, 4 years, have I just like completely fallen in love with this Pokemon. And that's Yanma and Yanmega. I love Yanma and Yanmega. They're like the Dragonfly. Like, we don't have Dragonfly Pokemon other than Yanma and Yanmega, but they're so cool. And the way they move, especially, that's what I appreciate about them now. Now that we see Pokemon in the overworld, the way that they move, I just love it. And Yanmega is a cool design. It's a strong design. And I think Yanmega is dragon, if I am not mistaken.
No, it's still bug flying.
Okay, I'm wrong. I am mistaken.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it is still a cool bug flying Pokemon. And I'm a very big fan of it. So that's where it goes. Now, like I said, I'm a poison simp. So Ekans and Arbok are staying. I also love snakes. So I just kind of kept them there. Now, I don't think this will come as a massive surprise, but we had to axe Pikachu. Because Pikachu can't be the mascot, but whoever we put at 25 becomes the new mascot. And I only ever had 2 Pokemon in mind for this one. One of them was Riolu, as Matteo also had in mind for his and ultimately didn't go with. And part of the reason I didn't go with Riolu is because I was like, Riolu isn't the mascot. Lucario would be the mascot. So I wouldn't want Riolu to like supersede Lucario. So that was a big part of the reason that I didn't put Riolu here. But the Pokemon I did put here is my favorite Pokemon line. And even though 25, the mascot, is not my favorite Pokemon, it's the one that comes after, I still feel like this fits for the mascot. So Zorua and Zoroark are my 25 and 26, with Zorua being the new mascot of Pokemon. So very edgy, but I think Zorua has a very strong design as well. I think it's both cute but very cool. And I did choose the original Zorua and Zoroark, not the Hisuian versions. Although the Hisuian ones are very cool as well. But I felt like it made more sense for just the pure dark to be a mascot than to have some like strange like ghost and normal type that was a little bit over designed for like a mascot design. So I went with the standard dark, which actually is my favorite version of Zoroark.
Yeah, it was also one of the Pokemon that they debuted Gen 5 with too, so
Yeah, it totally is. And I just love Zoroark and Zorua. And I think Zorua is just very cute and also underrated. So making it the mascot really kind of elevates it. I kept Sandshrew and Sandslash, actually. Not necessarily because I love them, but more because I was changing up a lot of the other 2 stages, and this was one of the last ones I got to, and I was like, there's nothing I really want to swap it with. I did consider swapping it with its Alolan variants, but ultimately I was like, I kind of like the original better, and Ground is a more underutilized type in my list, so I went with the Ground. Now, Nidoran female, I'm sorry, you're gone. And I replaced it with a different ground type. I know it's not ground type all the way through. It's ground type when it hits Nidoqueen. But I replaced it with Sandile, Krokorok, and Crocodile. I love Crocodile for different reasons than Matteo said last episode. A lot of his reasoning was like anime related. Mine was not anime related. I never watched the Gen 5 anime. Mine is purely just design and type. I love dark types, but I just love Crocodile's design. I think it's cool. I remember Crocodile was one of those Pokemon very similarly to Corviknight that the second I saw it, I was like, that thing is on my team because it is cool. I love the alligator. I love the typing. I just love the general design, which makes Nidoran male just Nidoran because there's only one Nidoran, and I kept it. So Nidoran, Nidorino, Nidoking are safe. Nidoking's one of my favorite Pokemon. I would never remove Nidoking. It was my first shiny ever, and it's still the Pokemon I associate the most with myself. So I am keeping Nidoking. Now on to Clefairy and Clefable. I don't connect with these Pokemon. I don't particularly like them. But I wanted to keep the kind of like motif of something like cute. So I replaced Clefairy and Clefable with Swablu and Altaria.
Ooh, very good choice.
Yeah, I really like Swablu. and Altaria. They're very great Pokemon from Gen 3. One of my favorites from Gen 3. I think they're very underrated. Part of the reason I like them is because while they have the dragon type, they don't look like dragons. And that was always appealing to me. And I also was like, okay, well, Clefairy and Clefable are fairy type, and Altaria becomes fairy type in a Mega Evolution. So you still kind of fulfill that to a degree. But Swablu and Altaria were my choices for 35 and 36. Now, on 37 and 38 are Vulpix and Ninetales. Fantastic Pokemon. Some of the best Pokemon. But I had to replace them because they got better later. So Vulpix and Ninetales are now Alolan Vulpix and Alolan Ninetales. They're true, better design. And I truly believe that, despite the fact that I love Vulpix and Ninetales, and they are like some of the best designed Pokemon, I still sit here and they were. I think Alolan Vulpix was one of the first Alolan forms ever shown, alongside Alolan Executor, and I still sit here and I think it's still the best regional variant version. Like, it is one of the best improvements, and it improved on a Pokemon that was already good.
Yeah, Vulpix and Ninetales are very iconic in their base forms, and I feel like for as you said there, the Alolan ones are also very iconic. I would see them more as equals because I don't like one more than the other.
Yeah, and I think what ultimately puts the Alolan one over the top for me is the typing. I do like ice types, and the fact that Vulpix is all white and blue made it very, very, very cute. But then Ninetales gets Fairy, and Ice Fairy is a really cool typing. There's not enough Fairy types. There's also not enough Fairy types that aren't using the color pink, and I appreciate that for Ninetales because Ninetales feels like a lot of. I'll talk about Pokemon Mystery Dungeon a lot, but a lot of my association with a lot of Pokemon comes from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon and the way they characterize Pokemon. And Ninetales was characterized in the first Pokemon Mystery Dungeon as this mystical Pokemon that knew a lot about the world, and it almost had this spiritual connection. And that's why the fairy type to me always fit Alolan Ninetales, because I interpret it as a mystical element to Ninetales. Because I interpret fairy type as magic, not necessarily pixies, just magic in general. And so I really felt like it fit Ninetales quite a bit, and I love Alolan Ninetales. So now we're on number 39 and 40, Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff. I really wanted to keep Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff, and I had for the longest time, but then I was reminded that Igglybuff exists, and I just couldn't waste a 3-stage on Wigglytuff and Jigglypuff, so I had to axe Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff as a result. But I replaced them with actually two of my very, very favorite Pokemon, Sneasel and Weavile. Sneasel, you guys know this about me, but Sneasel and Weavile are two of my favorite Pokemon. Weavile is I have a plushie of Weavile sitting with my Pokemon team. Weavile's always on my Pokemon team, and I love the Dark Ice type. I would have loved to include Sneasler as well, because I am one of the few people who like Sneasler. But there wasn't a place for Sneasler here, unfortunately, so only Weavile gets through. I share a favorite Pokemon with that one dev who worked on Pokken Tournament, who decided to put Weavile in the game just because it was their favorite Pokemon.
I mean, Weavile is also very cool, so you and that one Pokemon dev aren't wrong.
I know. I sat there when they announced Weavile for Pokken Tournament, and I was like, did the developers just make the roster for me? Because all my favorite Pokemon are in this game, and some of my favorite Pokemon aren't even popular. But anyway, so the next ones at 41 and 42 are typically Zubat and Golbat, but I obviously moved them lower to include Crobat, so I had to replace them. So I replaced them with another bat-like Pokemon, which is Gligar and Gleescore.
Yeah.
Gligar and Gleescore, incredible designs, just like Sneasel and Weavile. Sneasel and Gligar were always cool in Gen 2 when they were introduced, but they served the problem of, unlike things like Scyther and Electabuzz and Magmar from the first gen, they were smaller in design. They felt more like a first stage than a solo stage. And Gen 4 completely fixed both of those Pokemon by giving them badass evolutions. Weavile and Gleescore are both super strong evolutions. They're both super cool. They don't go nuts with the design. They look like bigger, more evolved versions of Gligar and Sneasel, and that's why they're in my opinion, two of the best future like evolution designs that came after the original gen. Like they just did it perfectly. They felt natural. 43s to 45 is Oddish's line. I got rid of Oddish's line because I don't like Oddish's line, and I replaced it with a different Pokemon that is also kind of cute, the way Oddish is cute, but its evolutions are better than Oddish's evolutions, and that's Togepi's line. Togepi, Togetic, and Togekiss. Togepi and Togetic were awesome from Gen 2. Togekiss, another Gen 4 evolution that just slapped, was great. The fairy typing being added later just elevated these three Pokemon from where they were, like already being cool design, to actually making them like really fun to use. And Togepi is such a staple. I couldn't not include Togepi. 46 and 47 were Paris and Parasect. Got rid of those ones because Paris is the most annoying Pokemon now. Like I cannot.
Everything.
No, not because it's in everything. Because after Legends Arceus, I can never look at Paris the same way. Paris was one of the most forgettable Pokemon prior to Legends Arceus, and post Legends Arceus, it's one of the most painfully memorable Pokemon. Like I hate that I remember Paris.
It was just so fast, and it would just always interrupt you.
So I replaced it with a better bug type Pokemon from Gen 1. Another one that I had to move because it got an evolution, which is Scyther and Scizor. I don't even think this needs explanation. Like Scyther, already an incredible design, one of the best Pokemon from Gen 1. And unlike some of the one stage ones from Gen 1 that got evolutions later, and the evolutions were kind of like, Scizor was like so good. And the cool thing about Scizor and Scyther that I like is that both of them are usable. So you don't even need to evolve your Scyther to a Scizor, and it's still like usable because it's strong. And it still has a very like the designs are so distinct that you can like them separately. Like Scyther doesn't feel under-designed, and Scizor doesn't feel over-designed. In a way, they feel like two separated Pokemon, but they're connected. And that's what I like about them. So it was a no-brainer they were going on this list.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Venonat and Venomoth were also cut. I've never connected to these Pokemon, but I replaced them with another poison type kind of bug looking Pokemon. I replaced them with Skorupi and Drapion. Another Gen 4 Pokemon that I really like. Dark and Poison, really cool type. And I remember in Gen 4 I didn't love Drapion, but it grew on me over time, and now it's become one of my favorite poison type Pokemon. So that one again was like really easy. And purple for purple.
Scorpi's kind of blue though.
Is
Drapion's
it?
purple.
I guess, yeah. Number 50 and 51 are Diglett and Dugtrio. I got rid of them very, very fast. I do not like Diglett or Dugtrio. Part of it is that I think the design is boring. The other part of it is just like Paris, Diglett is annoying because Diglett and Dugtrio are super fast, and it's really hard to run away from them in the Diglett cave. So I have bad memories of Diglett. I just don't like Diglett. So I replaced it with the better mole Pokemon from Gen 5, which is Drillbur and Excadrill. Matteo kind of went over this in his Pokédex episode 1, but it's a very cool looking Pokemon. It has a great typing. It was busted at the time it came out. Now, Meowth is 52, 53. I tried really hard to convince myself to keep one of Meowth's many forms. But ultimately, I hate Alolan Meowth. I like Alolan Meowth. I hate Alolan Persian, so I couldn't do it. I love Galarian Meowth, but I do not like Berserker. And this is something you might come to know from my list. I hate normal type Pokemon, especially pure normal type Pokemon. They drive me nuts. I think they're useless. I think there's no reason to have a pure normal type Pokemon, especially not a 2-stage one. So as much as Meowth is such an icon, I had to get rid of it. But I respect Meowth enough to replace it with something that can fill its role. So I replaced it with another normal type, a better normal type, that is also a cat. I replaced it with Litleo and Pyroar, because at least Pyroar is also fire, and Pyroar is cool. Male Pyroar is cool.
Female's cool.
Female's
well.
okay, but male Pyroar is one of the coolest Pokemon. I love male Pyroar. Awesome. Litleo's cute. So you'd still get a cat there. You still kind of get a normal type, but you get a better one.
The cool thing with Pyroar is the fact that it reflects the way lions are in real life, where like there's more female lions than male lions.
Yes, that is true. Little story about Pyroar. Pyroar was one of two Pokemon that when they showed off the Pokemon for Gen 6, because if you remember, Gen 6 was one of those gens where they showed you everything before the games came out. I loved Pyroar's design. I was like immediately like, that Pokemon is on my team. And Litleo is one of the Pokemon that is a bit rarer, but you can find it within one of the first routes. So I remember like we kind of like got together for Gen 6 and played through the whole game in like a weekend. When the game started up, I was 2 hours behind everybody because I spent a full 2 hours trying to find a male Litleo, and I would not move on until I found it. I was like, nope, I will not stop until I find this Pokemon.
Could have progressed into a later route where
I
Litleo was
wanted
more
to have
common.
no, I wanted to have Litleo from the beginning. I like training. I like living with my Pokemon. So I do love Pyroar, and that's why Pyroar's here. Psyduck and Golduck, gone. 54 and 55 are a different bird now. It's Murkrow and Honchkrow. I've always liked Murkrow. I've grown to respect Honchkrow, but Dark type is one of my types. So Murkrow and Honchkrow were an easy pick. I knew they were going to be on here. And Psyduck seemed like a great place to replace it because Psyduck, why do you call it Psyduck and make it pure water?
Oversights.
So they're gone. Mankey and Primeape I really did want to keep, but I just couldn't bring myself to keep them. So I replaced them with the infinitely better two-stage fighting type Pokemon of Riolu and Lucario. Like, I believe Matteo also did that, spoilers, but Riolu and Lucario is one of my favorite Pokemon. Like, he's another one of those Pokemon like Charizard where I'm fully aware how overrated he is. I don't care. He's overrated because he is the best designed Pokemon after Gen 1 until Gen 4. Lucario was the best designed Pokemon. And I still believe he's one of the best designed Pokemon. And I think that's partially because he's one of the animals that has never been overused. And he's an animal that was used very well. Like a jackal is a cool looking animal. They did him very well. And they never did more jackals, and they didn't overdo it. Like, there's tons of dragons, there's tons of mice, there's tons of cats. So it doesn't matter if you really like Meowth. Like, there's a million other cats, whereas there's only one jackal, and it's Lucario, and he's cool. And there's a reason that he's one of the most popular Pokemon. That's not a starter. Part of that is marketing. The other part is just because he's really well designed. Mm-hmm. I think he's one of the coolest steel Pokemon too, because I think he's one of the only steel Pokemon that isn't made of metal. He's steel because he has a steel stance, because he's such a strong fighter that you can't knock him down. He's a conceptually steel Pokemon. Growlithe and Arcanine at 58 and 59 are staying. They're two of my favorite Pokemon. I would never touch these perfect creatures. I love Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine, but they have nothing on the original. The original is perfect. They cannot be touched. I did replace Poliwag's line. I considered only replacing Poliwrath with Politoed, but ultimately there were already a lot of water Pokemon and I wanted to cut down and use other types. So I replaced Poliwag's line with Swinub's line. Swinub, Piloswine, and Mamoswine. Mamoswine is one of those Pokemon that took a Gen 2 Pokemon that needed an evolution and made it better. Mamoswine is a cool Pokemon. Very cool Pokemon. And Piloswine needed an evolution, and they did it perfectly. I respect Gen 4 for taking a lot of the Pokemon from Gen 2 that I liked but didn't love and made me love them. So I knew Mamoswine was going on here. I didn't know where, but it was easy to put Mamoswine's line on because of that. Now, spoilers again for Matteo's episode, but I did the same thing as him. I didn't touch Abra or Machop's lines. I considered removing Machop, but ultimately I was like, no, I feel like Machop is still the perfect fighting type 3-stage, and Alakazam and Abra and Kadabra are the perfect psychic ones. I couldn't remove them. They're staples. They're great. They're perfectly designed. Now we come to Bellsprout's line. Not a fan of Bellsprout. I don't like how it starts with legs and then has no legs. Victory Bell was so annoying in the anime. It just screamed all the time. So there was no rhyme or reason to this replacement. I was just like, okay, this is a 3-stage. Let's put in one of my favorite 3 stages. I replaced Bellsprout's line with Shinx's line. So Shinx, Luxio, and Luxray. There weren't enough electric types in Gen 1 to start, so I need to add some. And Luxray is just, again, like one of the only 3 stages from Gen 4, but a very great, well-designed Pokemon from Gen 4, and is still one of my favorite, like, cat-like Pokemon. And it's so majestic, and I think it is honestly one of my favorite electric Pokemon, other than like Pikachu's line. Like I really like Luxray. Tentacool and Tentacruel are gone. I replaced them with a different water 2-stage. Now this one is surprising because I never thought I would put this Pokemon on a list until, what was it, 7 months ago? Basculin and Basculegion. Basculin is a dumb Pokemon. I hated Basculin. I was like, why? It's one of those useless fish Pokemon that's one stage that has no purpose, that exists in every gen. And I was like, why does this Pokemon exist? And they gave it the most badass evolution. Basculegion is so cool. I love Basculegion. And just because of Basculegion's design, I threw these 2 on. And I love the typing. Water Ghost. I love the lore. How like the dead schools of fish turn into Basculegion. Just so cool.
Yep.
Also 2 very coolish different. I won't say they're cool, but it does have 2 different forms depending on gender. Not trying to say male Pokemon are better. They're not. But in Basculegion's case, the male one, I prefer the color.
And they have cool shinies as well.
Yeah,
Both the
they
male
do
and
have cool
female
shinies.
are really cool.
It's fun story about shinies. Gino got 2 shiny Basculin in the same run and got a male and female. I have since gotten 3 or 4 shiny Basculin, all of them female. I have never found a male. Replacing Geodude, and I think I share this one in common with Matteo too, but replacing Geodude's line, I replaced it with Honedge, Doublade, and Aegislash. Again, perfect designs. Great design. I love Ghost type, Ghost and Steel. That is the other Pokemon from Gen 6 that when they showed it, I was like, that thing is on my team. Pyroar and Aegislash, immediate staples to my favorite Pokemon when I saw them. Aegislash has a very cool ability. It's fun to use. It has a cool design. It's so unique. It's like unlike any other Pokemon out there at the time. We hadn't really gotten into the motif of inanimate objects being Pokemon until Gen 6, and Aegislash was kind of one of the first ones. And it's still the best one and the most unique one, so very easy choice, Aegislash. Ponyta and Rapidash, I like them. I don't love them, so I took them out and I replaced them with a different fire type Pokemon. I put Larvesta and Volcarona here.
Yep. Great choices as always.
I have nothing more to say other than like Volcarona is just one of the coolest Pokemon. Like, period. It's just a cool Pokemon. And it's from Gen 5.
I think it was Champion Alder's like ace as well.
It was.
It really upped the game for bug type Pokemon. Because like bug type Pokemon for the longest time were pushovers. And you would never like really treat them seriously unless you had a Scizor.
And it's something I can believe too. Like it's another one of those like simplistic yet very powerful designs. Like it's a giant moth that's made of fire. Like it is cool. It is just really cool and it's really intimidating. It's edgy. So I had to trade out the fire horse for the fire bug.
Yep.
Now this next one was a very, very late addition, and it's mostly because I couldn't think of another 2-stage to add. So I kind of just threw this one in. I did not keep Slowpoke exactly. I changed it to Galarian Slowpoke.
So just pure psychic.
Yeah, but it's because I like Galarian Slowbro. I really like Galarian Slowbro, Poison Psychic. So that is my line. Now, don't get me wrong. If I had to bring in Galarian Slowking into this with that, I would not have made that decision because Galarian Slowking is a literal monstrosity.
Nightmare Fuel.
Terrible design.
Just Galarian Slowpoke and Slowbro is cool. A Galarian Slowbro is definitely, in my opinion, an improvement on regular Slowbro. And I do like Slowpoke to a degree. So I was like, okay, I don't really want to keep Slowpoke, but I don't really have anything better to replace it with. So if I'm going to keep Slowpoke, I at least want to give what I consider to be the best version of it.
Yeah, Arm Cannon is cool.
After that, we're at 81 through 82, which is Magnemite Magneton. I do like Magnemite Magneton. I really like Magnezone, but there wasn't really a place here for them because I needed to put in a new 2-stage. So I replaced them with a different 2-stage electric Pokemon that I really like. And that's Yamper and Boltund.
Oh, they're good.
Little electric corgi. He's a cutie. And then Boltund's just a good doggo. And that's all I can say about them. They're not painfully brilliant. They're very basic, but they're just like, they feel like dogs. And I feel like there's not a lot of Pokemon that feel like actual dogs, like that you would have in your house. It's like, oh, what a cute dog. Like, good boy. Like most of them are like really edgy or like over designed or like merged with other animals, but Boltund is just a straight up good doggo.
No inviting Hundour the demon dog into your home.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want Handour in my home, but Boltund I can pet. Farfetch, unfortunately, well, no, Farfetch didn't have to go because technically regular Farfetch does not have an evolution. But either way, Farfetch had to go. I replaced it with a cooler 1-stage bird Pokemon, and that's Cramorant. The Pokemon, the little like, what's it called? It's a what kind of
It's like a
bird is that?
pelican.
Yeah, it's like
It's
a
a
pelican.
pelican.
But it shoots Pokemon like it like shoots Pikachu's and like that other fish Pokemon from Gen 8 out.
Barrascuda.
I didn't love Cramorant in Gen 8. I thought it was funny. I thought it was a funny Pokemon, a funny concept, but I didn't really like Cramorant. Cramorant became one of my favorite Pokemon after Pokemon Unite because it was my main in Pokemon Unite, and I loved it in Pokemon Unite. It was so funny. It was such a fun Pokemon, and it made me respect it. And that's what I love about the Pokemon brand expanding beyond the main games, because in the main games, I find it's very tough to use 1-stage Pokemon because they tend to be weak. But you find new avenues to appreciate Pokemon when you're playing a different kind of gameplay where you're not limited by like the stages and like the stats. And Pokemon Unite really made me like Cramorant. Doduo and Dodrio gotta go. Terribly designed Pokemon. I do not like them. And I replaced them with different birds. So I replaced them with Rufflet and Hisuian Braviary.
Ooh, very nice choice.
Yeah, I've always liked Braviary, but the Hisuian Braviary has that extra type that I really like with the Psychic. So I threw that one in, and that's all I really have to say on that one. Seal and Dugong are some of the plainest Pokemon in existence.
To put it plainly, no pun intended.
Just a little seal. Like, it's just a seal. So I got
it
rid
has
of
a
it.
horn on its head. Thank you very much.
It has a horn and a big tongue.
That is very, very fair, but I got rid of the seal. And I replaced it with something that makes no sense. Like, I just put in a different 2-stage I liked, which is Toxel and Toxtricity.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, they're cool. They're, I like the rocker theme. I love the typing, Poison Electric. I love the little diaper that Toxel has. I remember hunting for the shiny Toxel and Toxtricity for like hours and hours. I think I spent like 3 or 4 hours hunting it, and then they released the shiny one through a raid. They're red.
That's how I got mine.
Yeah. So they're cool, and I do really like the Toxtricity Dynamax as well, and it has multiple forms, so that was an easy one. Grimer and Muck, I also got rid of Grimer and Muck. I've never liked Grimer and Muck. They're just sludge. Like, they're boring. So I replaced them with the infinitely better pile of trash, Trubbish and Garbodor. I'm sorry, Joe.
Perfection.
But and this isn't even a meme. That's the thing, is like, it sounds like a meme, but I genuinely think Trubbish and Garbodor are great Pokemon. Like, they're well designed. They're very fun Pokemon. And I know that they're little trash Pokemon. I know people are like, oh, Gen 5 poor design because there's a literal trash Pokemon. I'd rather a literal trash Pokemon that's cool, like well designed, than a pile of sludge with a mouth.
You guys have been to New York. The Univers region is based on New York City. What do you see everywhere? Garbage. People throw the garbage and just leave it outside. And that's what Trubbish and Garbodor are.
It's just such a fun concept that it's a garbage Pokemon and it's poison type. Like, that's so fun. I love it. And Garbodor is just this massiss garbage. So I like Trubbish
pile
and
trash.
Garbodor. So they
trash out of trash. Yum trash.
I also did get rid of Shelter and Cloyster at 90 and 91. And again, this was one of those ones where I was like, okay, what's a 2-stage I want to put in? And I just kind of threw in one. But this is another one of my favorite designs of Pokemon. It's Rockruff and Lycanroc. And honestly, when I picked Lycanroc, I didn't even think. I was like, oh yeah, I can use all three forms. I thought I could only pick one. But even with the thought that I could only go with one of the forms, I like all three of its forms so much that I would be happy with any of those being there. Like Rockruff is a very well designed Pokemon. I can see why it was one of the first Gen 7 Pokemon they showed off because it is a very strong design. No pun intended that it's a rock. But
Eh.
Lycanroc is also, there's so much variety between its three forms. And there's not a lot of rock Pokemon that I like, but I like that one. Like, that's one of the problems I have with some types is that they always feel the need to make the Pokemon made out of what its, like, element is. So like rock Pokemon tend to be like made out of rock, or steel Pokemon tend to be made out of steel. But with something like Rockruff or like Lucario, which I talked about before, I like that it's just, an animal that can control that element. That is more interesting to me because I don't want to play as a giant rock. I've done it enough times. Like I want something different. So Rockruff is cool. They're not quite good doggos. I wouldn't pet Lycanroc and keep it in my house, but I love wolves. And so I love
You can
Lycanroc.
pet Rockruff. Rockruff's a good doggo.
Hey, people can have pet rocks. Thank you.
But Rockruff is a good doggo that's only good when it's a puppy, and then when it grows up, it's a pain in the ass.
You give it an Everstone. It'll never evolve.
Keep it pupper forever.
To no surprise, Ghastly, through Haunter, and Gengar will stay.
Yeah, they
Gengar
gotta stay.
was my OG favorite Pokemon. Is still up there. I love Ghost type. I consider myself a Ghost type trainer. I consider myself a Poison type trainer, and that is all because of Gengar.
Because it's both.
Yeah, and it's one of those perfect Pokemon. Like, it wasn't so much when Gen 1 was out, but I feel like starting with around Gen 6, when, like, the Gen 1 love, like, started to resurface a lot, Gengar, like, skyrocketed to the top of one of, like, the most popular Pokemon, and now it has merch everywhere, and it's used so much. But again, it's one of those ones where I sit there, and I'm like, yeah, I like this super overrated Pokemon, but there's a reason it's super overrated, because it's perfect. Onyx had to go because it has an evolution now, but I also would not include it either way. And I replaced it with Spiritomb because Spiritomb is cool. And Spiritomb has a cool type.
Yep.
Ghost Dark. It kind of has a rockish motif to it. It starts off as a little stone and then becomes a ghost face. But I just think Spiritomb's cool. So I was like when I was looking at one stage Pokemon, I was like, this is one of those ones where like immediately I was like, that one has to be on because it's one of the cooler one stage Pokemon. Drowsy and Hypno had to go as much as I love the Hypno song, and I replaced it with a different psychic line. One that, very similarly to Basculin and Basculegion, was a Pokemon that was off my radar until...
Jules' mic briefly cut out for this portion. I did my best translating it in post. Essentially, all he said was he kind of likes Stantler, but like he said earlier in the episode, he views normal type Pokemon as useless. Future Matteo out.
On top of that, it was a one stage, so I considered it to be one of the most useless type Pokemon. Like, literally unplayable, no matter how good it looks. And Weirdeer changed it all. Weirdeer is cool. Again, not like over-designed, like very much feels like a natural evolution of Stantler. Very elegant, very radiant, has a psychic type attached to it. So it was an easy pick there. I knew I wanted Weirdeer on this one. It was one of my favorite. If not, like Basculegion, I think, and Weirdeer actually were my favorite Pokemon from Legends Arceus that it included, of its like 9 new Pokemon. So I know that's not a big sample size, but it was very cool. Krabby had to go.
Yeah.
As much as I like the from the anime, I did it very poorly. I used to be able to do it better in my youth. I replaced it with a different water type Pokemon. I replaced it with Carvanha and Sharpedo. They're two of my favorite water Pokemon, period. I love Team Aqua. They're one of my favorite villain teams, and Sharpedo's like that staple. Dark type, one of my favorite types. I love Rough Skin as a ability. So it was very easy to know that I was going to put them in, and this was just a natural place to throw them in. Voltorb and Electrode also had to go. Not a fan of Voltorb and Electrode, so I replaced them with a better electric type Pokemon.
Or shame. Disapprove.
I'm not a fan, but I replaced them with a better Pokemon, a better electric type Pokemon, Joltik and Galvantula.
Oh, okay, you are forgiven. You are forgiven.
Yeah, another one of those like resurgence of the bug type from Gen 5. Like Galvantula's cool. And that's the thing, is like people can say that Gen 5 had bad designs. And don't get me wrong, I agree that some designs in Gen 5 do suck, but it had a lot of cool ones too. And
Yeah.
Galvantula is like one of those ones that was like, yeah, that's a cool Pokemon. It's a cool typing, and it's just a cool Pokemon, and it has a cool like unique move. Like it has an electric web. Like that's awesome.
Electro Web,
I
I
can't
think
remember.
it was.
Yeah, Electro. Yeah, it's literally called
Actually
Electro
called,
Web.
yeah, it literally
Yeah.
was called Electro Web.
So yet another one. Execute and Executor had to go. Lame Pokemon in my opinion. Well, an Executor is funny, but it's just a meme. I replaced it with a 2-stage Pokemon that literally, if I told child me that I like this Pokemon, child me would be like, why? Because it goes against everything I believe in. It's a normal type Pokemon. It's a stupid looking Pokemon. And it's a Pokemon that's been around for a long time, and I actually disliked this Pokemon, and suddenly this year I was like, hey, that's a cool Pokemon, and I really like its evolution. Apom and Ampabomb. I don't know
Ambipom.
why. Ambipom, sorry. I hated Apom. Thought Apom was a dumb Pokemon, partially because it was normal type and it was 1 stage. And when they gave it an evolution Gen 4, it was one of those ones where I was like looking at all the evolutions, I was like, why does Apom have an evolution? Screw that. And I didn't like Ambipom. And then suddenly when the Gen 4 remakes came out and I was looking who I wanted to do my team, Yan Mega and Ambipom were two of the ones that really stood out to me. And I was like, Ambipom's kind of cool. I'm going to use Ambipom. And even though I don't love pure normal types, I think Ambipom, I'm willing to forgive it because I do like Apom and Ambipom now.
Well,
So,
normal types do have their utility, right? Like if you go into, like for instance, Morty's gym and you have a normal type, you just teach it other moves, and his ghost type moves don't do anything, right? Or is
I
it the other way
guess
around?
No, it goes both ways.
Oh, it does. Oh, okay.
It does, yeah. And it's also, the utility is also that it doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. It only has fighting. But my issue, here's my tirade about normal type. My issue is I get it. It's supposed to be a neutral type. It's not supposed to be weak against anything. But then they should have made it not weak against anything. Because, sure, it only has one weakness, which is fighting. But, like, I think fighting is one of the most overused types in Pokemon, and most Pokemon, if not all Pokemon, can learn a fighting move. So normal has always just felt like weak to me. I've never liked normal, but Ambipom is cool, and that's also addendum. That's also why I like Hisuian Zoroark, because even though it's normal, it can't be hurt by fighting, and therefore it's not bad because it's also Ghost.
Yep.
But we're on to 104 and 105, Cubone and Marowak. I really like Cubone and Marowak, so I kind of kept them. I got rid of Marowak because Alolan Marowak is better in every way. Again, I'm a Ghost Pokemon person. Fire Ghost was a very cool, like I'm sure it had been done already, and since then it has been done a lot. But at the time, it was a really cool, like the reason I liked it so much wasn't just because I like Ghost Pokemon, it's because Ghost felt so perfect for Marowak because of the Marowak mother in Gen 1. Like it felt like such a nod. And then the design wasn't like over designed. Like they, for the most part, kept the design the exact same. They changed the color, they added some fire, and they made it more malnourished. So I like Alolan Marowak a lot. I have a shiny Alolan Marowak. That's one of the ones I hunted in Gen 7. And so I'm a big fan. So Cubone and Alolan Marowak at 104, 105. Now there's a big section of replaced stuff here. So Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan at 106, 107, I replaced those with, you guessed it, Ghost type Pokemon because I love Ghost type Pokemon.
Why not?
Hitmonlee has been replaced by Rotom, one of the best 1-stage Pokemon, period. And 107 has been replaced by Mimikyu, another one of the best 1-stage Pokemon, period. Two very cute Pokemon designs. They're Ghost type. They have fun second types, Electric and Fairy. I love Mimikyu. I loved it from the start. I loved Rotom from the start. I thought Rotom was legendary for a full 2 years until
I did too.
until Platinum came out. But that's okay. And Rotom has a lot of versatility because he has so many forms. And now Rotom's become such a big staple because it's been in the decks and it's become
literally it's also been in the decks.
At this point, they should make Rotom Dex a playable Pokemon. But yeah, so those were replaced. I replaced Lickitung at 108 with Absol, one of the only one-stage Pokemon that I actually think is perfect the way it is, and I never want them to touch it. Again, Absol is one of those Pokemon that gives legendary energy. And, again, from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, they treated him like a legendary Pokemon in that game. They very much, like, really went into the lore of Absol of, like, this is the disaster Pokemon. And because Pokemon Mystery Dungeon was all about, like, incoming disasters, Absol was able to sense it, and then it joins your party, and it's actually, like, no matter what you choose, Absol is always the third, like, key member of your team, and so I grew really attached to Absol from that, on top of already liking Absol because it has a really cool design and because I love Dark type, and then its Mega Evolution is really cool as well. So Absol was an easy one. Coughing and Wheezing are gone. Not a fan, but I replaced them with a different floating purple Pokemon, Drifloon and Drifblim, because we need to represent all the ghost Pokemon here. They do my favorite thing. They take children away from me.
We're keeping that in.
Yeah, you can keep that in.
I'm keeping that.
That's fine.
Yep.
But Drifloon or Drifblim, again, like they're Pokemon that I didn't really appreciate when they first came out because I was like, whatever, it's a balloon. But I've come to appreciate that and them, and it's not just because of the lore. It's also because their typing is really great, the ability is really great, and the design is really cool. As we moved to 3D, a lot of Pokemon got just butchered. Like they were so cool in the sprites, and they became so lame in the 3D. But Drifloon, and Drifblim, specifically Drifloon, and many other Pokemon became cooler because you see how they move. And I don't think I ever realized that the like strings of Drifloon's body were its hands. And seeing those like slender hands like floating is so creepy. And it added a new layer because then it didn't look stupid to me anymore. It looked creepy. And that's what I want out of my ghost type Pokemon is I want them to look creepy. So I really appreciate them now. Rhyhorn and Rhydon had to go, unfortunately, because I didn't have room for a 3-stage, so I had to remove them. I replaced them with Noibat and Noivern. I don't love Noibat, but I really like Noivern. I think it has a cool design. I needed some more dragon types as well, and so I threw it in there. I did use Noivern in my playthrough of Gen 6, so it was an easy throw in there. That's all I really have to say there. Chansey had to go because Chansey has since become a 3-stage, and also I wouldn't keep Chansey.
But then how are you going to get XP?
EXP share on in my version of the game. But I replaced Chansey with Seviper, another one of my favorite 1-stages. Don't get me wrong, I would never use it in battle. It will never be on my team, but I love Poison type. I love snakes. I love Seviper's design, so I threw it in there. Tangela also had to go because Tangela is a 2-stage now. And I didn't really know what to put here, so I opted for putting in Zangoose so that Seviper and Zangoose could be beside each other, and because they have that rivalry, I like the rivalry between them. I don't love Zangoose as a Pokemon, and I'll be honest, I think the only reason I put it here and the only reason I even kind of like it or remember it is because I like the Seviper and Zangoose like rivalry, the lore behind the Pokemon, so it felt fitting to throw it in here, and also to just get another normal type in here. I kept Kangaskhan because Kangaskhan's another one of those Pokemon that I just think is perfectly designed. It's totally fine as a 1-stage. It doesn't need more than 1 stage. Although, again, it's normal type, so but whatever, that's fine. Kangaskhan can stay.
Mega Kangaskhan is cool.
Yeah, Mega Kangaskhan is very cool. Horsey had to go, and while I do like Horsey's line, I do like Kingdra. I didn't want to use one of my 3-stages on Horsey. I didn't like it that much, but I did replace it with another water type Pokemon. I replaced it with Dewpider and Araquanid. I really like these Pokemon. I remember Gino and I were really obsessed with them when Gen 7 came out.
Yep, Araquanid's great.
I think one of my favorite things about its lore is that depending on the game you play, you have a completely different interpretation of it, because one of the games says that it like traps small Pokemon inside of its head and like drowns them, and the other one says it like nests small like helpless Pokemon in its head to protect them. So it's like very different
What
interpretation.
the heck? I did not know
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the games says it murders Pokemon, like in its head, and the other one says it like protects them. So depending on the
Really?
game, you have a completely different context of whether this is like some big like spider that's actually a friendly giant, or whether it's this terrifying creature that drowns little creatures.
So in Sun, it says it crawls onto the land in search for food. Its water bubble allows it to breathe and protects its soft head. In Moon, it says when it comes across enemies or potential prey, this Pokemon smashes its water bubble covered head into them.
And maybe it was Gen 8 that did that.
Yeah, or maybe it was Dewpider. I don't know. Like
I do remember the murder thing, though.
yeah, I could have sworn. I'm curious. Now I got to pull out my decks.
The sword entry for Dewpider is amazing. It forms a water bubble at the rear of its body and then covers its head with it. Meeting another Dewpider means comparing water bubble sizes.
No. We weren't wrong. So it's not for Dewpider. It's for Araquanid.
Yeah, you're
Sun,
right.
It delivers headbutts with water bubble on its head. Small Pokemon get sucked into the bubble where they drown. And in Moon, it says, despite what its appearance suggests, it cares for others. If it finds vulnerable, weak Pokemon, it protectively brings them into its water bubble.
Yep.
And also, like, I'm also looking at it now, Matteo, and the even funnier layer to Araquanid is in Ultra Sun. It says, it usually passes the time in the water. When its belly is full, it stores its subdued prey in the water bubble on its head. So again, in Ultra Sun, it's a murderer, but also in Ultra Moon, it also has murderous tendencies because it says it has a habit of storing things it values in its water bubble. If its trainer doesn't watch out, Araquanid will try to put them in its bubble. So in Ultra Moon, they take away the like protecting, and they say now it murders people.
What is this Pokemon?
It is like legend.
It is a badass.
I normally never read the Pokédex entries, and Araquanid is messed up.
Yeah, it's a little bit terrifying. But we'll move on. So 118, 119, Goldeen and Sea King. I don't like fish. But I do want another water type. So I put in Weasel and Floatzel. Another
Nice.
Gen 4 Pokemon that just like, for some reason in the resurgence of Gen 4, like I grew a new appreciation for them. So I threw them in. That's always refreshing to have Pokemon that are water that aren't fish. That being said, this came as a surprise to me. When I got to Staryu and Starmie, I didn't want to get rid of them. And I don't often use Starmie. I don't think I've ever used Starmie on my team, but I've always respected Starmie. I've always thought Starmie was a cool Pokemon.
It is.
It is very cool, and I do like the type. I do like Water Psychic. So I kept Staryu and Starmie. Now, I replaced Mr. Mime with a different one-stage Pokemon, and I kept with Water because I was having a nice little trail of water Pokemon here. And this is a water Pokemon that I just really like. I think it's a cool one stage. Because that's the thing, is I don't like one stage Pokemon, but I like them when they do something unique with it. And Wishy-Washy is a cool one stage Pokemon. I love the whole like concept of like it's a school of fish. When it has enough damage, most of the school runs away and it becomes the single Wishy-Washy. Wishy-Washy is a very cool Pokemon, so I threw it on here. Scyther had to go, unfortunately. He was still earlier in my decks, but I replaced Scyther with Heracross, another very strong solo one stage Pokemon, bug type. Again, one of those Pokemon that I think is just perfect, timeless in terms of its design, does not need an evolution, never need an evolution. I don't love its Mega Evolution, but that's totally okay because Heracross regular is great. Jinx had to go, not a great Pokemon, but I brought Sableye in because I really like Sableye. Again, Ghost type, love Ghost type, Dark type. It's creepy. I love my Ghost types creepy, and I do like its Mega. And that's another Pokemon that I think benefited from 3D. 3D made it so much creepier than it was in 2D. It was already creepy in the sprite, but 3D giving it that creepy little smile, and you could see the crystal eyes just being dead, like, is great. Sableye
Yeah.
is a great Pokemon. Electabuzz also had to go, so I replaced it with Morpeko.
Angry.
Yeah, the hangry Pokemon. It's one of my favorite Pikachus, I think. Again, it has dark. I don't think it always has dark though, right? It's only dark when it's the hangry mode, right?
Yeah, when it's in its hangry state, yeah.
Yeah, so I like Morpeko, and I thought it was good to go here. Magmar I replaced with another fire type Pokemon. I gave it to Torkoal. I don't
Nice.
particularly like Torkoal. I think Torkoal is very average. It's good. I don't think it needs an evolution. I don't love Torkoal, but I wanted to replace Magmar with another fire, and Torkoal just felt fitting. 127 is Pinsir. Pinsir's a great bug Pokemon. I had to keep it, and it has a cool Mega. But Tauros I got rid of. Not a fan of Tauros. It's a one-stage normal, which I don't like. Again, I like one stages when they have something to them. So I did replace it with a normal type because I was like, I need more normal types. But I replaced it with Cast Form because Cast Form has a cool mechanic to it. I like how it changes with the weather. So I threw Cast Form in there.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I forgot about Cast Form.
So now we're kind of on to the last little leg of things. Magikarp and Gyarados at 129, 130. Cannot touch them. Perfect Pokemon. Lapras is also a very strong Pokemon, so I kept it at 131. And Ditto, you need something to breed. So Ditto Stan.
To put it bluntly, yes.
How else am I going to breed these Pokemon? So I kept Ditto. Eevee had to stay, but we got to choose the evolutions. Now, if you caught last episode, Matteo kind of themed his with his evolutions, and I considered actually doing the exact same thing you did. But the reason I didn't do it is because even though I liked the theme, ultimately I don't actually like Sylveon. Sylveon bugs me. I know a lot of people love Sylveon. Sylveon's the favorite evolution of a lot of people. But the thing that kills me about Sylveon is that it doesn't have the iconic Eevee black eyes. It has blue eyes, and that's always bothered me. It makes it look like a bug. So I don't like Sylveon. And then Umbreon I like, but I don't love it. I find it a hassle to use in battle. So I didn't want to include Umbreon either. So ultimately I didn't theme my evolutions. I just went with my three favorites, which ultimately meant that I kept two of the evolutions that were already in Gen 1. So I kept Vaporeon at 134, I kept Jolteon at 135, and I replaced Flareon with Espeon. Espeon is my favorite evolution. I think it's the perfect evolution, and Flareon is my most hated evolution. Even though I said that whole spiel about Sylveon's eyes, I don't like Flareon. I think it's because it's fluffy.
I mean, like, Eevee's fluffy also.
I don't know. It's also because it doesn't feel fire, you know? Like, all the other Pokemon, like, all the other evolutions feel like their types. Like, Vaporeon has, like, fins and gills, and Jolteon's all spiky like lightning, and then, like, Leafeon's literally, like, made of grass, and Glaceon's made of ice, and then Espeon has this, like, regal, like, psychic colors. Like, it has, like, psychic, like, cheeks, and, like a third eye, like, crystal thing on its forehead, and then Umbreon has like a lot of moon motifs, which goes really well with like the darkness or the nighttime. But Flareon's just red and fluffy. Like there's nothing fire about it. Like
Well,
maybe
the fur always kind of looked to me like a raging fire.
if it was fire, the way that like Rapidash and stuff are, I think I like the design better. But otherwise, I've always felt like Flareon, other than its color, nothing screams fire to me about Flareon. And I think that's why I just don't like it. Now, Porygon was a late exclusion because I actually forgot that Porygon had evolutions. So then I had to replace it with something. And I was like, okay, I was like scrambling. I was like, what one stage can I throw in? So I threw Hawlucha in.
Nice. I was getting worried that you were putting Hawlucha on.
I like Hawlucha. I can live with Hawlucha, but it's definitely not one of my favorites. But I threw it in because, again, like if a Pokemon's going to be one stage, I feel like it should have some kind of cool aspect to it, and Hawlucha is one of those ones that design-wise, at least it's really fun and unique, so I threw it in. So now we're on to my fossils. I replaced Almanite and Almastar with my favorite fossils, which, call back to Matteo, same one, Tyrunt and Tyrantrum. They are like perfect. They are so cool. Dragon type, rock type, T-Rex, like just fantastic. But I did not remove Kabuto and Kabutops because I've always loved Kabutops, and I think it's really, really cool. I do like the rock water type.
I see that you're a follower of the Way of the Dome, you heathen.
Yep, I am a dome fossil. I am not a Helix. Helix can go.
Praise be Lord Helix.
No, it's all
Death to
about
the ways
dome.
of the dome.
I honestly forgot about all that Twitch plays Pokemon stuff until
All
right
the
now.
names are great.
And then Aerodactyl didn't have to stay a fossil Pokemon, so I got rid of him because I don't like Aerodactyl. The only time I've ever liked Aerodactyl is in that one episode of the anime where Charizard beats the crap out of it. And I replaced it with the infinitely better rock Pokemon, Shuckle.
Yes.
For many of the reasons that Matteo stated in his previous episode, go see that. Shuckle is just a fun Pokemon.
Yep.
Again,
Alright, Shuckle.
One of those Gen 2 Pokemon I didn't really like, but now I like. And honestly, I don't think it needs an evolution because I like it being stupid the way it is.
A quick aside on Shuckle, I always found it weird how like people drink like liquid in like Shuckle's shell. The berry juice, like it's just weird, man. A poor Shuckle had to like die to give you that shell.
And then Snorlax had to go. So this one I just kind of like threw something in, and I wanted to throw another one of the Pikachus in. And the one I settled on was Togedemaru. It was between Dedenne and Togedemaru. And I know Dedenne works hard, but as Sakurai has said many times, working hard doesn't mean you get in. So I didn't give Dedenne that freedom. I gave it to Togedemaru because Togedemaru is literally hard. It doesn't work hard, it is hard. It's made of steel. It's a porcupine. And I love the steel electric type. It's very cute. It's one of my favorite Pikachu clones, so I threw it in. Now we're on the last few things, so the legendaries and the pseudos. Now I know Matteo themed his 3 trios, as in he kept a trio, and I considered the same. But then I was like, you know what? There's so few legendaries in this deck that I need to just pick the ones I want. So there's no theme behind my trio, other than the fact that they all go hard. They all slap. They're fantastic designs. So Articuno at 144 has been replaced with Ho-Oh. One of my favorite legendaries. Ho-Oh is perfect in every way, shape, and form. Pokemon
Very
Gold
good
is the
choice.
superior Gen 2 game. Ho-Oh is the superior Gen 2 legendary bird. That might be a hot take because I know Lugia is awesome, and I do love Lugia, and actually I considered putting Lugia on here, but the reason I didn't is because I can't have Ho-Oh and Lugia and then something that doesn't fit with it, so I'm just not even going to touch Lugia. I'm going with Ho-Oh. So Ho-Oh went in.
Yeah.
Replacing Zapdos is another perfect Pokemon, Rayquaza. Like, still one of the best designs for any legendary. When I think legendary Pokemon, it's one of the few that always pops into my mind because I'm like, that is a legendary Pokemon. Like, that is a like insanely powerful, cool Pokemon, and it's mega literally broke the meta game. So that's also cool. And then replacing Moltres is Giratina. Again, one of my favorite legendaries, especially its origin form. And the way I looked at it is like you can look at these 3 Pokemon as like, if you want to collect them as like 3 like powerful god like creatures. That's the way I looked at it. They don't really connect other than the fact that they fly. Pseudo was easy for me. I am indifferent to almost every single pseudo legendary line other than the 2 that I dislike, which are Komodo, which is I just hate it. It's just dumb. I like the typing, but it looks stupid. And I do not like Hydreigon. I wanted to like Hydreigon. Hydreigon I tapped from the very beginning because it was Dark Dragon. I was like, this is going to be awesome. This Pokemon's going to be great. I forced myself to try to like that Pokemon in Gen 5, and I came out hating it. Because I was
It's
like,
just too wide.
It's a pain in the ass to evolve. It looks stupid. It's honestly not even a good type. And especially when they introduce Fairy, it just sucks. There's only one pseudo-legendary for me. And that is Dreepy, Dracloak, and Dragapult. The perfect pseudo-legendary. Created in Gen 8. Ghost Dragon.
Keeping up with the purple theme.
Keeping up with my purple theme. Keeping up with my ghost theme. and it's never been done before. What Pokemon carries its previous evolutions with it
As
and then uses
ammunition.
them as ammunition? Like literally murders its children to win a Pokemon battle. And I remember like Dragapult was one of those Pokemon, one of the few Pokemon that was not leaked for me except for its type. And I was anticipating that Pokemon. I was like, Ghost Dragon, it has to be good. Like I was so disappointed with Hydreigon. I was like manifesting that Dragapult would be cool. And when I finally saw its design, I was like, I was surprised. Don't get me wrong. It was a lot sillier and like more whimsical than I had anticipated it to be because I thought it would be like intimidating the way that Giratina was. But I still loved it. I was like, this is actually really cool. Because it's so nonchalant. Like, it doesn't look like this intimidating dragon that's willing to sacrifice its children to kill you. It looks like this dragon that is so indifferent with the fact that it's already dead that it doesn't care if it kills its kids. It's like
Because
whatever.
they're already dead too.
They're dead. Who cares? So I like Dragapult. And then for the final two, so my last legendary and my mythical, Mewtwo has to stay. Mewtwo is the legendary Pokemon. Like perfect in design, still one of my favorite Pokemon, one of my mains in Smash. Mewtwo has to stay. It's perfect. I was tempted to keep Mew for the same reasons that Matteo kind of stated in his Pokédex one of like the motif of Mewtwo and Mew. But I was like, no, I have a mythical that's my favorite mythical, and so I need to use it. And it's actually one of my favorite Pokemon, and it's one of my favorite Pokemon that I don't talk about a lot. But I love Celebi. Celebi is one of my favorite Pokemon. I've always adored Celebi, and it's always felt like Celebi has actually felt to me always like the hardest Pokemon to get. Because for a very long time, you could not get Celebi.
Yep.
Like at all. Like there was no way to get Celebi for a massive amount of time. The first time I remember in my life where it would have been possible for me to get Celebi was if I had that bonus disc for Pokemon Coliseum, but I didn't have it. And then the next time that Celebi was even given away was in the Gen 2 remakes. And that was like that was way later. So Celebi always felt to me like I loved the Pokemon movie with Celebi. I loved the design of Celebi, and it always felt so mythical to me because it was so unattainable. And the only other Pokemon that ever felt that way to me, because Mew did not feel unattainable to me. Because Mew, I knew you could hack it. It appeared a lot in like the anime, like it was used more. The only other Pokemon that felt that mythical to me throughout my life was Jirachi, but I don't like Jirachi. I think Jirachi's dumb. I was lucky enough to be one of the few people who purchased Pokemon Ranger, so I always had Manaphy, so Manaphy never felt mythical to me. And then after Manaphy, all the mythicals started to be just given to you through codes and stuff.
Yeah.
So Celebi is my mythical. Like it's always been my mythical.
I miss those events.
I do too. I miss when they were like events and not just, hey, here's a random guy in the Pokemon Center who's like, hey, I have this really hard to find Pokemon. Do you want it?
Like literally in
Mhm.
Pokemon Go today, I got a Cosmog for just doing like a simple mission. So like now I can use that Cosmog and put it into the next game and just use it as trade fodder or whatever. Pokemon Go has devalued legendary Pokemon more than any event in Pokemon would.
Well, at least with Pokemon Go, you actually have to like go and like do the stuff, right? Like it's not just a code.
You can get remote raid passes. You can sit down and just on your couch and just, if you live in a good spot, get whatever legendary is available.
Time for some stats. So we'll pull up the pie chart here for you. So here are the numbers of each type that I had.
Can't wait to hear those ghost, poison, and
Yeah,
dark
which
stats.
were surprising. I thought that they were going to be much higher than they are, to be honest. I was surprised. My list is actually very balanced, except for one thing. But the number of bug Pokemon is 16. Number of dark Pokemon is 16. Number of dragon Pokemon is 12. Number of electric Pokemon is 13. Number of fairy Pokemon is 5. So a little bit low there. Like I intended for it to be bigger because I originally intended for Jigglypuff to stay, but then I had forgotten. But yeah, so Number of fighting was 7, which was actually very surprising to me. Number of fire was 12. Number of flying was 30.
Dang. Holy cow.
Yeah, a lot of
Mhm.
flying. Number of ghost was 19. Number of ground was 14. Number of ice was 8. Number of normal was 16.
Dang, that seems high.
Yeah, I know, right? But there were a lot of like dual type normal.
Yeah, that's true.
Number of poison was 19. Number of psychic was 13. Number of rock was 7. Number of steel was 8. Number of water was 20.
That seems low. Holy smokes.
And then the kicker, the most neglected type on in my Pokédex, the number of grass Pokemon is 4.
So what? Your starters and Celebi?
The starters and Celebi, that's it.
How?
I don't know. I just clearly don't like grass Pokemon. I'll tell you what it is. I do love grass Pokemon, but all my favorite grass Pokemon are starter Pokemon.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, too, because grass is my most often used starter, as a result, I don't pick up another grass type Pokemon when I play. So I haven't developed a bond with a lot of grass type Pokemon because I have more often than not picked grass type starters. I did consider putting Trevenant in, and I think in hindsight, I probably should have, but that's okay.
You're not a fan of Shroomish and Breloom?
A little, but not definitely not Shroomish.
With my list, I really wanted to put in Lotad's line and I really wanted to put in C-Dot's line, but I would not waste a 3-stage for those.
Yeah, that's the same with me. Like I like Shift Tree, but again, it was like, well, I don't want to waste a 3-stage on Shift Tree, and then
Yeah.
there weren't a lot of 2-stage grass Pokemon that I cared for. Breloom was one I considered. Trevenant was one I considered, but ultimately I didn't. The reason I didn't put Trevenant actually was because I was like, I have too much Ghost, so I didn't put Trevenant. But in hindsight, it probably would have been better because then I would have had a little bit more grass. But that's okay. So, and then the other stat to share with you is the number of original 151 that are remaining on my list. Now, I included Alolan Pokemon in this and like variants. So if like a Gen 1 Pokemon was still included, even if it was a variant, I included it in the number.
A Meowth is a Meowth is a Meowth.
Exactly. So, but just that disclaimer. So my number's a little higher than I think Matteo's was, but my number is 41 of the original 151.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you removed all the variants, it would be closer to like 34, 33. But that's my number, 41. Which works out to what, Gino? What's the percentage?
Let me just do the math here. 27%.
That's the Pokédex.
That brings us to the end of today's quest. If you liked what you heard today, hit that like, subscribe, or follow button below. If you want to contribute to the conversation, let us know any ideas you have for any upcoming quests, or just share your thoughts. Leave a comment, share it with your friends. We do read all the comments, so do leave one. Let us know what we got right. Let us know what we got wrong. Tell us why Joe should like Garbodor. Tell us why Jules should have had Voltorb and Electrode on there as well. Anyway, that's it from us here at the Hub World today. We'll see you next time at the Hub. Matteo?
Microsoft, make a new Banjo game. See everybody.
Yeah.